2005, before the Great Recession, Deutsche Bank and PricewaterhouseCoopers analyzed over 2 millennia of global gross domestic product, built on regression analysis and a projection. Until the Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism, the worldwide distribution was surprisingly flat. In the mid-1800s, when the West Golden Age began, progress leapt forward, and in America by arguably a larger measure than ever before. To preserve the momentum and to provide the banking aristocracy a physical interface with the almost ethereal mechanisms of the economy, what is called the invisible hand, the Federal Reserve was quietly established, an institution empowered to leverage in perpetuity or until future capacity to borrow or tax through inflation was extinguished. Our planet is undoubtedly in a state of flux. As we approach the conclusion of our year, we race to rebalance fact with fiction, birth with death, progress with regress, and ultimately, hope with doubt. America's election will have little effect on global momentum in this clear realignment. The developed world is hurtling towards the logical and natural conclusions of political conglomeration, the issuance of massive debt, and an insatiable desire for growth. Greece descends into terrifying and familiar territory as it struggles with foreign forces, the service of expanding obligations within and without, as corrosive unemployment threatens cohesion and a commensurate appetite for race-based politics engenders derisive nationalism. The European Union itself faces a crossroads. Further integration replete with stronger supranational banks, super commissioners, and an elected president, or reset. Dismantle the experiment. Allow Spain, Italy, and Greece to restructure on their own, according to their own needs, and according to their own internal dynamics, rather than force an awkward resolution and path forward from outside. In vivid irony, America's historically expensive $6 billion election, in seemingly manifest destiny, summoned Hurricane Sandy, literally placing a cloud over U.S. elections. Federal agencies, not letting a crisis go to waste, have injected themselves into what were historically local relief responsibilities. Indicative of wild inefficiencies, the resources traditionally available to mayors, councils, and governors have been funneled to Washington and back, making even the most ardent foe supplicant to political rivals. Progress through largesse, as it were. Japan, at the easternmost edge of modernity, suffers from all of the aforementioned, as their lost decade compounds itself amidst angst over a rising China, nuclear fallout, and an aging population with little hope of replacement, a fact of life endemic in advanced societies. With its long march to collapse, Japan's debt to GDP ratio slowly splits. Alas, the first world, like the famed integrated chips, which propel their economies to unimagined heights, are so interconnected and complex that regulation is next to impossible. As government and the economy similarly become inexorable, for the typical politician, symbiotic, and contagion is ever present as debtor's roulette rounds the table. The developing world, caught in the pincer is held hostage to a comedy of obstacles, not limited to the rule of law, the role of the state, transparency, corruption, sustainable growth, civil war, famine, and exposure to the perils of the developed economies, which for now hold world monetary policy hostage to central bank dogma. Russia's newfound energy dominance is a proverbial double-edged sword, holding Europe hostage, threatening harmony at home, and raising the specter of a Russian empire, of a new and virulent order. However, as a balance to Western foreign adventurism, Russian resurgence and emphasis on the self-determination traditionally lauded as a Western value is a arguably welcomed development. India, crowded and raw, still wrestles with what remains of its imperial baggage and caste orientation, buttressed by endless bureaucracy. It is a juggernaut, the largest democracy in the world. Its technological ascension to nuclear power and as a potential linchpin to Western designs in Asia offer this ancient society lots of options. The Southeast Asian cold resource war necessary for expanding energy-dependent economies could at any moment turn hot. Ultimately, Africa remains the dark continent, divided, impoverished, violent, and seemingly ever nascent. But perhaps the place where life purportedly began and where chaos roams is paradoxically the system we should seek to protect. Much like its vast ecological parks, one could argue it is the world's last socio-economic frontier. Contrast this unvarnished reality devoid of precision, experts, trajectory, with the orderly malaise and intellectual imprisonment afflicting the rest of the so-called established societies. A world wild with variance and struggle. And while for years it's been raked for resources, it is for all intents and purposes the last vestige of leverage available to the one-worlders and their central planners in an unsolved global system brimming with debt. The pressures existing around us are titanic, glacial in their speed, absolute in their effects, and as natural as the seasons. The World Bank and the IMF have shown that now for almost 40 years, there is a marked divergence in Asia versus the West. But rising anxieties and slowing growth portend a realignment under new principles. As the year of 2012 draws to a close, it may not bring apocalyptical upheaval, but without recognizing the illusory engines of innovation in derivative versus real wealth, our efforts for honest growth are preempted, and a realignment and reconnection with the rest of the planet could very well be described in biblical terms. Our role hereon as stewards of this planet, or merely corporeal sojourners, rather than obsess over shaping what arguably shapes us, is to observe and illuminate.